from Yugoslavia is now in session. L'audience du Tribunal Penal International pour l'ex-Yougoslavie est ouverte. Please be seated.
Yes, Madam Registrar, good morning to you. Could you call the case, please?
Good morning, Your Honours. This is the case number IT-0368, the prosecutor versus Naser Oric.
I thank you, Madam. Mr. Oric, can you follow the proceedings in your own language?
Good morning, Your Honours. Ladies and gentlemen, I can follow the proceedings in my own language.
I thank you. You may sit down. Appearances for the prosecution.
Good morning, Your Honours, and also good morning to the defense. My name is Jan Wubbe, lead counsel for the prosecution. I'm here together with Ms. Joanne Richardson and Mrs. Patricia Sellers as co-counsels, and also our case manager, Mrs. Donika Henry Freiling.
I thank you, Mr. Wubbe, and good morning to you and your team. Appearances for Naser Oric.
Dobro jutro. Good morning, Your Honours. My name is Vasvia Vidovic, and together with Mr. John Jones, I appear for Mr. Naser Oric. We have with us here today our legal assistant, Ms. Jasmina Čosić, and our case manager, Mr. Jeff Roberts.
I thank you, Madam Vidovic, and good morning to you and your team. So, let me start from here, even though the documents that I will be referring to were filed confidential. You will recall that we last sat on Wednesday. Yes,
Your Honour, it might be Tuesday that we sat.
Yes, we sat on Tuesday. Yes, we sat on Tuesday. And on my way to the airport, I was informed, to my surprise, I must say at the time, because we had been sitting till the previous day, that Mr. Jones had, on behalf of the defense, approached a member of my staff, of our staff, rather, and informed him that he was objecting to the prosecution interviewing one of the defense witnesses who is due to give evidence shortly, on the assumption that what the prosecution intended to do was irregular. To cut it short, between the exchanges that I had with my member of the staff, more than one member of the staff, and that included the senior legal officer, in consultation also with the other two judges, we managed to find out that indeed the prosecution was intending to interview a defense witness before, as the defense put it, the defense had a chance to prove this witness. And we obtained the assurance on the part of the prosecution that they would not proceed with this interview as planned, but wait until the matter is discussed, debated, argued, and decided upon by this trial chamber. And in fact, an order was signed by one of the judges on my behalf, precisely specifying this. This morning, when I returned to work, I found a voice message from Mr. Jones, which I would imagine goes back to either Tuesday or Wednesday, in which, to my surprise, and also I must say to the surprise of my two colleagues who have heard the voice message, it transpired that what triggered this up in the first place was the understanding on the part of Mr. Jones that there had been an ex parte motion by the prosecution, of which, contrary to normal practice that we have adopted, we did not give notice to the defense, and that following this ex parte motion, we ordered, or we authorized, we issued an order authorizing the prosecution to interview this individual as per the ex parte motion. I need to declare here, and I think now the parties do agree that there must have been some misunderstanding between them. I must declare, however, that there was no ex parte motion, such ex parte motion, that there was no discussion at all between the trial chamber or any component of the trial chamber with the prosecution with regard to this witness, except what I said earlier. And it would never gave any such order as I was given to understand when I heard the telephone voicemail. So that is what I wanted to make clear, that there was no ex parte motion. If there had been, we would have followed the previous practice of informing the other party of the existence of such motion, and consequently and naturally there couldn't have been any decision on our part. Having said that, I don't know if you are prepared to discuss this matter today. In other words, the substance of the motion and response that motion that followed, namely a motion by the defense to prohibit basically the prosecution from interviewing this individual, or whether considering that there is a witness who is an ambassador and who needs to possibly finish his testimony today, you're prepared to postpone it till tomorrow. That is something that I want to hear. But however, I must point out, Mr. Jones, that in exchange for the prosecution's agreement to postpone this interview until we have discussed it and decided upon it, we promised that we would give the prosecution and you, of course, the opportunity to debate it and us to consider it and decide it. So, but of course, we are very anxious to know exactly what you intend doing.
Yes, it was just on that procedural matter, really. That firstly, as Your Honour has rightly observed, we do have an ambassador who's testifying today and who we envisaged would finish today, and he's got travel plans tomorrow. He's of course willing, if necessary, to change those plans, but we did hope to start and finish his testimony today. I can be 2 to 2.5 hours, so that would fit in. So that's why I would prefer to discuss it tomorrow, but also for a second reason, which is that according to Your Honour's order, the prosecution was ordered to file a response on Friday. We were informed by the prosecution that at 4:30 p.m. on Friday that they filed a response. We haven't seen anything in writing, and therefore that's another reason why we're not in a position to reply particularly if they bring forward any legal arguments or legal authority. We, of course, need to look into it and need to research any authority. So we would definitely concur with the suggestion that this be postponed until tomorrow.
I thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Vubin.
Well, Your Honor,
we haven't seen the response either. I mean, I haven't seen the response either. I'm not saying that it wasn't filed, of course. I'm saying that we haven't seen it. At least I speak for myself, because but what we have been in camera discussing amongst ourselves already, some of at least what is involved in this issue by a matter of principle and practice, but we were not made aware of your response. And in fact, I thought that you were coming over here and say, this is our response or something like that. But
Your Honor, we filed indeed Friday late, and for myself, I also was not able to even get a copy from that filing itself. So I can imagine indeed that defense has a right to prepare itself, and secondly, we support, of course, expeditious processing of such a witness.
So, I mean, obviously. So I think we will postpone the discussion on this subject. May I also have your agreement, both parties, to postpone discussion on the other motions that we have received, such as Rule 90, such as documents from Republika Srpska Special Division, and so on. We'll postpone them till another date. Okay? All right?
Yes, Your Honor. If it means that you mean oral discussion, or does that include a written response?
No, you obviously have a right to file, especially with regard to the to both of them, actually, both the Rule 90, etc. But Mr. Vubin and Madam Vidovic and Mr. Jones, we cannot allow ourselves anymore the luxury of granting ourselves the full time period that we have at our disposal under the rules. I think if we really need and have to move forward at a reasonable pace, we should cut down on the time limits considerably and try to deal with these motions as expeditiously as possible. Because otherwise, if I wait for 15 days here, and I mean, in the meantime, we will be hearing 2-3 more witnesses, and we will be going into recess. So please try to understand that when I say cut down on the time limits, it's not to deprive you of the time that you require to answer, to respond to motions, but to insist or impress on you the importance of trying our level best to cut down on the time we need to respond to these motions. This is an appeal that I make, of course. And then, if there are problems like you did last week when you asked for a small extension of time to be able to file one of the responses, I mean, we are not unreasonable. We do grant. But please try, both of you, to do your level best to come forward with your responses at the shortest time possible. All right. Today's sitting. I agree entirely with you that we should try to finish with this witness. Have you got an idea how much time you require for cross-examination?
Your Honor, I'll certainly try and keep within the trial chamber's understanding that this is an important witness, first of all, and try and have him finish today. I understand from what the defense has represented, they'll take 2.5 hours. By that understanding, it appears that I should have at least an hour and then time for whatever questions or rejoinder. My cross-examination at this point should fit within that time frame, Your Honor.
All right.
But I do have to just have one caveat, and that is, of course, seeing the defense present their evidence might alter the cross-examination. That's just very natural.
All right, okay, thank you. Can I suggest to you, Mr. Jones, because I see that you will be dealing with this witness, that you try and finish in 2 hours?
Yes, I'll go as fast as I can.
Right.
May I, in that regard, I take it that on uncontentious matters and broadly construed uncontentious matters at the Security Council, etc., that I can lead a fair bit of the evidence. That way we will obviously go a lot quicker.
Okay, unless we will adopt the usual practice, unless I have serious objections from the other party, we will not intervene while you are,
Yes.
as you put, direct questions.
I might just say that this witness has testified in the Milosevic case. He gave a very lengthy statement to the prosecution. He's an ambassador of many years' experience, and so the risk of suggestion, I submit, is minimal to non-existent.
All right, is he still an ambassador? I'm asking so that I know how to address him. Basically.
I think he still benefits from that title, but is not serving as an ambassador currently. So,
thank you. Let's bring the witness in, please.
And may I just say, Your Honour, we'll enter into the merits tomorrow of this whole matter, but just I apologise that you had to come back to a voicemail message from me. As you understand, on that Tuesday evening we were trying to reach various people, and it was expedient for me to leave a message. Subsequently I thought of retracting the message or leaving another message, but I thought best just to leave it as it was.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr.
Your Honor, I have two very short submissions to do. It is about producing documents already promised and information regarding completing a prosecution exhibit. Can that be done in the meanwhile? Well,
if you do it very quickly.
I can do it quickly, Your Honor. It's about the letter by Mr. Gramsci Di Faccio on the 21st of October 2005. I want to tender it because it has to deal with the Simic article and should be confirmed officially through tendering. And I would like to tender it and ask for a P number.
The next prosecution exhibit number, please.
P610, Your Honor.
So that document will become P610. And what's the other?
The other issue is a notification that we had problems with two videos, parts of videos, P328.
Yes, I think that can wait till tomorrow, Mr. Vuben.
It's just an announcement that we solved it, but that we will tender new copies to the judges by tomorrow.
Right. Okay. Yes, please do.
Sorry, we don't know what this is, P610 and the Simic article.
I don't know either, Mr. Jones.
So we reserve
we'll obviously
our
see it
observations.
later. Where's the witness? In fact, can we see this document, P610? I'll see what it is all about. Ambassador, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
And welcome to this tribunal. I know it's not the first time you've been asked to give evidence, but of course, as presiding judge, I would like to welcome you again. My name is Carmel Ajus. I come from Malta, and I am the presiding judge in this trial against Naser Oric. I am flanked to my right by Judge Hans-Henrik Breidenshalt from the Kingdom of Denmark, on my left by Judge Professor Alben Azer from Germany. So welcome. You know what the procedure is. You are going to start giving evidence very shortly. And before you do that, our rules require that you make a solemn declaration, the solemn declaration that is contained in the text that is being handed to you now. Please read that text loud and aloud, and that will be your solemn undertaking with us.
Thank you, sir. I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I thank you, Ambassador. Please make yourself comfortable. Ambassador, how would you like us to address you? Usually I address ambassadors here in The Hague and elsewhere as Your Excellency. How would you like me to address you?
Please do not, please refrain from that.
Okay, thank you. So you are a defense witness, and it will be Mr. Jones who will go first. We are trying to do our best to finish with your testimony today, so that you can fly back tomorrow as scheduled. I have the cooperation of both parties in trying to do that. So, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Your Honour. Yes, please give your full name for the record.
Diego Enrique Arria.
And now, confirm for me, if you will, the following details. Firstly, you were born on the 8th of October 1938 and are of Venezuelan nationality.
Yes, sir.
What is your religion?
Catholic.
And your career has been as a politician, diplomat and ambassador.
Yes.
You're currently a consultant and visiting scholar of Columbia University in New York.
Yes.
I'll pause occasionally for the interpretation. And you're also Special Advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Yes.
Now, is it right that you were the permanent representative of Venezuela at the United Nations from 1991 to 1993, serving in the Security Council after Venezuela's election as a non-permanent member in 1992-1993?
Yes.
And finally, just a few more details to confirm. In March 1992, you served as the President of the Security Council.
Yes.
In April 1993, you were the coordinator of the caucus of the non-aligned countries represented in the Security Council.
Yes.
And in fact, I think it's true to say, isn't it, that you were a co-sponsor with France and the United States of the resolution establishing this tribunal?
Yes, I was very proud of that.
And now, speaking of this tribunal, did you testify here in the Milosevic case on the 10th of February 2004?
Yes, I did.
And you testified as a witness for the prosecution?
Yes, I did.
In preparing for that testimony, were you interviewed by the prosecution in April 2003 and again in September 2003?
Yes.
And as a result of that, was a witness statement drawn up?
Yes.
Your Honours, I'd like to pass up an exhibit which is the statement from 2003. I trust we can safely ignore that.
You don't have to worry about this because this is the usual siren tests on Monday at noon. So that's why I looked at my watch actually.
There's no need to run from the building, Ambassador.
Thank you. I was planning to.
Now, what you have in front of you is a witness statement with a witness information cover sheet, and it's a statement comprising 68 pages and 495 paragraphs. Do you recognise that as the statement that was drawn up following your interview?
Yes, I do.
And did you review this statement in detail over the last 2 days?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did.
And are the contents of that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, very much so.
Now, we're going to go to some passages in that statement, but for the sake of context, the statement concerns the policy and inaction, action or inaction, of the UN and UN member states to the Bosnian conflict in 1992-1993, when you were sitting in the Security Council as the permanent representative of Venezuela. Correct?
Yes.
As well as comments on the fall of Srebrenica in July 1995 and the responsibility of the UN and UN member states for that tragedy. It also contains those comments.
Yes, sir.
Now, following Venezuela's election to the Security Council, were you involved in briefings on the situation in the former Yugoslavia?
Yes.
And who were some of the people you had contacts with or who you spoke to and gained information?
Within the United Nations or outside the United Nations?
I was thinking initially within the United Nations.
At the beginning of the conflict in 1992, the Secretariat was basically the main source of information on the developments on the ground. That changed very rapidly when the Secretariat was not so forthcoming and so opportune in reporting to the Security Council. And I would say that the international media replaced the Secretariat largely by providing objective, factual, and opportune reporting and information to the international community.
And even prior to the beginning of the conflict, or as it started, did you have contact with Darko Šilović, the ambassador to the SFRY?
Yes, very much so, because Ambassador Šilović was the head of the non-aligned movement in the United Nations. Was at the time former Yugoslavia's ambassador to the UN, a very respected diplomat. And as I stated in the Mr. Milosevic trial, the non-aligned, we were against the partition of former Yugoslavia. We actually cooperated with the then foreign minister Lončar of Croatia, the Croat Yugoslav, to promote within the international community, mainly the European community, not to fragment former Yugoslavia. Mr. Milosevic asked me here, when did we change our mind about that? And I responded that it took very few weeks for the international community to find out that Mr. Milosevic was not Joseph Broz Tito, and that he was already, his fanatism was placing former Yugoslavia under great peril and danger, like times proved to be the case.
Right. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to attempt to summarise the main points of your statement, which you have in front of you. And first, I want to ask you about the arms embargo on the former Yugoslavia and its effect. And I refer to paragraphs 57 to 73 of your statement, dealing with Resolution 740 of 7 February 1992.
57?
Paragraphs 57 to 73. It's page 10 and onwards. Firstly, Security Council Resolution 740 of 7 February 1992.
Your Honor.
Yes, Mr.
Excuse me, I would just like to offer this broad objection. Also, I understand the questions of timing, but certainly it appears as if Ambassador Arria either has current memory of the situation, what he's testified to, and at this point, the statement, I don't understand whether it's refreshing recollection that he no longer has, or he's going to testify about something, and then the statement confirms that that was also his contemporaneous understanding, or he's testified about it before. But just to show that, in essence, I believe the statement is now being used to lead the evidence, in a sense, and not corroborate evidence that the ambassador has. I say that knowingly within the type of time constraints that we are in, but I would like to state that for the record, Your Honor.
Okay, what's your position on this, Mr. Jones?
Well, 2 points. Firstly, I haven't even started using it yet, so I don't see how Ms. Sellers is making a timely objection. She should wait and see. But secondly, the prosecution can't have their cake and eat it too, as far as this is concerned. We're all apparently trying to make an effort to finish with this witness today. Now, if I don't use an exhibit which this witness has said he's perused over the last 2 days, it's true to the best of his knowledge and belief, then we can be here for a week. I can ask him non-leading questions about Security Council resolutions, and I really don't see the purpose of that. So, as I say, the prosecution is trying to have their cake and eat it too, in laying down an objection, which now I suppose they'll seek to rely on in due course, but at the same time insist that I go speedily.
Okay. Okay, our position is as follows. I think the way it should go logically and in a legal context should be the following: that if you intend to tender this in evidence as an exhibit, I think you are fully entitled to do that. Of course, that's number one, because it's a statement released to the prosecution. That's number one. The understanding is that this, of course, is not in substitution of his evidence. He is testifying viva voce here. So you should put to the witness first and foremost whether he stands by what is contained here. In other words, whether he confirms on oath or pursuant to his solemn declaration the contents, the correctness of the contents of this statement. If he does, then of course you are entitled to put to him any questions which go beyond or arise out of the contents of this statement. But possibly please try to avoid asking him to confirm bits and pieces of this statement, because if he confirms the entirety of it, he doesn't need to confirm every event as we go along, one after the other.
Yes.
So this is basically our approach.
I'll ask him to elaborate on the
elaborate and answer any other questions that you would have for him. But I mean, we can read it.
Yes,
so,
yes, certainly, Honour. I might observe, by the way, that this statement was in front of Ambassador Arria when he gave evidence in Milosevic as an aid memoir. I find it a bit curious, to say the least. The prosecution is seeking to take a different approach in this case, but there you go. Ambassador, could you, first of all, yes, I asked you earlier, in fact, if you confirmed that this statement was true to the best of your knowledge and belief. Would you actually affirm on oath the truth of what's contained in this statement, in all of the paragraphs?
I absolutely do. I guess you are referring to the whole document or to the specific...
The whole document.
Absolutely, I certainly do. I have read it several times. I prepared very well my intervention last time in the Milosevic case. I fully believe in that then, and I fully believe them now.
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. And indeed, in terms of using this document, I think it can't hardly be expected for a witness to remember every single date, etc. That's why it's very natural that this should be used as an aid for the witness in any event.
As we go along, yes, of course, by all means, Mr. Jones. But what we meant is don't read out paragraph 53, for example, to the witness, to the ambassador, and then tell him, "Do you confirm that?"
No, that's
let's go a step further straight away, and if he needs to refer to his statement, of course, once he has confirmed it, has every right to refer to it.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honour. Now, at the time of passing the resolution, which imposed an arms embargo, did you think it would stop the war in the former Yugoslavia?
Yes, we very naively thought that was the case. When I say we naively thought that was the case, I refer to the non-permanent members of the Security Council at the time that didn't have the same information as the permanent members in the Secretariat had on the real situation on the ground, in reference to how fully armed one side of Yugoslavia was against another party was completely unarmed. I thought at the time that we were doing the right thing. Later on, a few months later, we found out the real truth, and I always maintain, Your Honors, that with that decision, the main members of the Security Council, with the support of the Secretariat, they signed the outcome of the conflict, in which one party was supposed to roll over the other one very rapidly because it was armed, and the other party was supposed to roll over and play dead. But the Bosniaks were not very good actors of that play and for that script, and did not roll over and play dead. They resisted, which became a process of massacre and murders and acts of atrocities against them from then on.
Thank you. So you say one party was supposed to roll over and play dead, and you referred to the Bosniaks in that regard. And just for the record, the party which was expected to win rapidly, which side was that?
It was undoubtedly what was left of former Yugoslavia, which was the Serbian part, under Mr. Milosevic.
Now, the Republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina was admitted as a member of the United Nations in March 1992. Now, is it right, firstly, that under the United Nations Charter, there's the right of self-defense?
I'm sorry, I did not understand your question.
Yes, my apologies. It's because I'm anxious about referring to the statement. It's very disruptive, Your Honour. I'm going to continue as I planned initially, Your Honour, and I hope there will be no objections. If I refer you to paragraph 60 of your statement, you say there pretty much what you've just told us now. I'm going to read 2 sentences from there. Quote, "Little did we know then that with that resolution we were involuntarily deciding the outcome of the conflict, that we were sealing the fate of the Bosnian Republic, that we were taking away from this member country the right of self-defense enshrined in the UN Charter. What seemed a moral act was in fact the equivalent of what, with hindsight, looks like a premeditated death sentence for the Bosnian Muslim, inverted commas, side of the Bosnia and Herzegovina Republic." Now, firstly, I'll ask you to explain a little why you say it was a premeditated death sentence.
I said at the time, when this was discussed in the Security Council, that I could not imagine that the permanent members of the Security Council, which were the most powerful members of the international community, and the Secretariat, didn't know that the Serb party had left all this armament on the Republic of what became the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that the Bosniak part were completely disarmed and didn't even have an army, didn't have a regular army, which I think the closest thing to a regular army that they had was at the end of the conflict, probably after 1994, but not before, when they were more, what the French call levé en masse, people that were resisting, like the Maquis in France, disorganized and weak and disarmed. That's what I meant at the time.
And why do you say the Bosnian Muslim side with side in inverted commas?
What?
In paragraph 60, if you see the last sentence, you say the Bosnian Muslim and then side in inverted commas. Why do you put side in inverted commas? If you can just explain that to us.
Your Honours, I was always very puzzled at the United Nations behavior in the international community before 1991. I never heard or read that when they addressed the Bosniaks, they referred to them as Muslims. This started after Serbia invaded Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then suddenly the international community seemed to have discovered there were Muslims there. It used to be Bosniaks for hundreds of years. Suddenly the creation of an ethnic element was included into the whole equation, which make it sound even much more confusing and terrible than it was. And the way some people have at that time and later on presented, like if former Yugoslavia was integrated by 3 tribes of savages, Croats, Serbs, and Bosniaks, which was not the case. The fact that some of the people and the leaders had behaved bestially didn't mean that the people were like that. But suddenly this ethnic issue became a fundamental element into the whole discussion. And I believe that distorted the perception of a simple fact that a fanatic in Serbia, had invaded the territory of a member of the United Nations, and then the international community would not raise a finger to defend that, not to protect them, and would not allow them to arm themselves.
Thank you. And now, if you turn to the next page of your statement, at paragraph 66, there's a reference to a fear that Bosnia and Herzegovina would become the tar baby of Europe. Now, can you explain that expression for us? What was that about?
You know, I was not familiar with that expression until one permanent member of the Security Council said it to me. Later on, I found out, you know, it's a part of the African folklore captured by a storyteller in America, which explains that when you find yourself in an inextricable situation that you cannot get away from, that you are caught in a situation. And the reference that I made there, that this ambassador made to me, it was a fear that some of the main European countries were afraid to bring this conflict to Europe. But it was in Europe. But nevertheless, they didn't want to get involved in the conflict. And they thought that the Serb would rapidly go over the rest of the country, and peace will be secure in that part of Europe. Part of this was, and I have said it before, that the Europeans never consider the Bosniaks as Europeans, but suddenly consider them as Muslims, which they had not done before.
Thank you. Now, I want to explore something you say at paragraph 92 of your statement, which is at page 14. And for the sake of context, I do need to read paragraph 92. On 8 June 1992, I attended the UNSC when UNSC Resolution 758 was approved. The resolution reflected a cynical interpretation of reality by requesting the victims not to impede the delivery of humanitarian aid to themselves by the reference to all the parties and others concerned. Victims and aggressors were considered alike. Now, can you explain what you mean by that phrase, victims and aggressors were considered alike?
Your Honors, one of the most reprehensible behavior of the international community that I found in the Security Council was always to try to reach the moral equivalence of the parties. Because if you treat both as criminals, as responsible, you don't make any difference between them, then there is no moral obligation on your part to participate. While at the same time, had you acknowledged that there was one aggressor against a member country of the United Nations, by the Charter, the Security Council would have been obligated and forced to act. But because they didn't want to act, it was much better to ignore it and to cover up the whole problem as the parties, which is really not only euphemism, but a perverse way to describe the reality of what's happening. That's what I meant with that.
And who in this scenario were the victims and who were the aggressors?
The aggressor was obviously the groups within Serbia, within Bosnia and Herzegovina, that were financed, supported, aided, armed by the former Republic of Yugoslavia. And the victims were the people in one part, some parts of Croatia, and then Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the concentrated attacks and acts of vandalism took place.
Right, thank you. In that regard, we have a next exhibit, which is going to be distributed. It's a United Nations Security Council document. It's for general distribution, S/24377, 4 August 1992.
this one by one. First, I think we need to give an exhibit number to the ambassador's statement that you are referring him to.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
And what's the next defense exhibit number, please?
D951, Your Honor.
So this will be D951. And the new document that you are seeking to tender or to introduce in the records will be D952.
Thank you. And for the record, this is a letter dated 4 August 1992 from the permanent representative of Venezuela to the United Nations, addressed to the President of the Security Council. Quote, there have been reports in the international communication media about concentration camps and the torture of citizens of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina by citizens of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Clearly, in view of their nature, these atrocities committed by citizens of one country against another, which is also a member of our organisation, cannot be regarded as internal acts that violate human rights, but rather as inhuman acts of aggression by one country against another, which continue to constitute a serious threat to international peace and security. And it's supposed to be signed by yourself. Do you recall this, Ambassador, this letter?
I certainly do. I recall it with sadness, because even though when I wrote that letter to the President of the Security Council, was it because the international media had projected in colors to the world to see that there were concentration camps and torture. The United Nations at the time never produced a report, not even mentioned that fact. I certainly, and the UN Security Council did not act in that occasion pertaining to my letter and to my request that the Security Council address such a grave violation of human rights.
Right, thank you. And so you considered at this point that this was actually an aggression by one country against another?
Absolutely. That was precisely the essence of that. Even at the time, the Red Cross and many other NGOs had already reported it. It was even actually officially reported by then President Izetbegovic of Bosnia to the President of France, François Mitterrand, at the time. And even though all those denunciations were made and presented, no one did anything about it. It took years to actually rediscover what was really happening in that respect.
Thank you. And we have a new exhibit now, which is, yes, it's called Professionalism in War Reporting, A Correspondent's View. It's by Tom Gjelten of the Carnegie Commission on Preventing Deadly Conflict, dated September 1997. I'm going to ask you about a few opinions expressed here. Now, firstly, I'm going to direct your attention to the first page, third paragraph. And this is, as we can see from the context, it concerns the Bosnian conflict. And it says, paragraph 3, quote, instinctively, many of the UN officers, and this is in Bosnia, felt more at ease among Serb army commanders who were career military men and treated them respectfully than among Muslim commanders, few of whom had professional military training. I want to ask you, is that something you came across in relation to Bosnia?
Your Honors, I had the privilege to lead the Security Council mission to Srebrenica, which was the first time in the history of the United Nations that the UN Security Council mission would go to the ground during a conflict. And when I got to Srebrenica, I knew why the UN Security Council would never send missions to the ground. Because you discovered the truth was taking place. That is being covered up behind documents and papers and statements. One of the things that we discovered, I was shocked to find out, when after many struggles to try to get into Srebrenica, being obstructed, sabotage by the second in command of the UNPOFOR forces, Brigadier Hayes, which prevented the arrival of about 40 international journalists who were accompanying our mission, were left stranded in Zvornik. was that when we entered Srebrenica, I entered first with Hayes and some of the Canadian officers. There was a group, to my surprise, within Srebrenica of Serb officials. At that time, we in the Security Council thought that Srebrenica was under siege, but we didn't know that it had been capitulated with the cooperation of the United Nations Protection Forces. And I was surprised to see these Serb officials next to Brigadier Hayes. And then there was a group of civilians, and Brigadier Hayes proceeded to introduce him to me, and he said, if my memory doesn't fail me, it's Colonel Rodic, this is Lieutenant Colonel such and such, Colonel such and such, in the Republic of Sparska. And I said, what is that? Well, you know, this is the Serb Republic of Sparta. I said, well, we don't have at the United Nations any republic that we recognize with that name. He proceeded to identify the 5 or 6 officers from the Serb side. And then he looked at the civilians who were on the other side, who had all kinds of, one has a green shirt, other brown, and he said, well, and these are also my friends. These also my friends were the Bosnian representative of the insurgency or the resistance in Bosnia. It was obvious that he considered the Sparska Serbs officials like the real authorities, the formal authorities. And he considered the Bosniaks, whose country he was in, as sort of a guerrillas or insurgents, but not as authority. So I was shocked to see how they acknowledge the aggressors as the official authorities and the victims as the opposite.
I don't think we have the date of this mission.
No, we're going to come to that subsequently, right, but the ambassador can tell us that. When was your mission?
That's in March 1993. It is...
we'll refer.
I think it's the 24th, but I would have to check. But this is in the latter part of March. It was Your Honor, story. I may add that this mission was prompted when the 5 members of the Security Council, what they call at the time the non-aligned group, was watching on television how the village of Srebrenica was under siege, and then. At the time, the Pakistani ambassador, Marker, presided the council, and we pressed the council to send a mission because the secretariat wasn't informing or reporting to us. CNN, BBC, Reuters were the source of information. I said at the time that the least informed body at the time, officially and institutionally, was the Security Council, because information was used as a weapon to really obstruct, to view the realities on the ground. Actually, while we were discussing the resolution to declare Srebrenica a safe area, actually we wanted to be a protected area. While we were discussing at 2 o'clock in the morning in New York, thinking that we're going to save Srebrenica, on the ground in Sarajevo, the UNPROFOR forces were helping to capitulate and to force the rendition of that village, which we only discovered a few days later when we got to Srebrenica.
Right, thank you very much. We're going to come to your mission shortly, and we'll have the report so we can check the exact date. But you mentioned Brigadier Hayes a moment ago, and if you turn to it's page 4, second paragraph of this. It says, quote, "To the news media in Bosnia, with no professional obligation to satisfy one side or another, it sometimes appeared that UNPROFOR commanders were misrepresenting reality in their eagerness to maintain good relations with the Serb side. A good example was the effort by UNPROFOR commanders to promote the notion that Sarajevo was not actually besieged because the Serb forces that encircled the city occasionally let UN convoys proceed through their lines. There is no humanitarian siege," declared Brigadier Viri Hayes, Chief of Staff to the UNPROFOR commander in Bosnia, speaking in Sarajevo in August 1993. I simply want to ask you if that's the same Brigadier Hayes you're referring to, and if you recall this incident.
I certainly do. Your Honors, in a country like Bosnia, the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, its Deputy Prime Minister, if I pronounce it correctly, Mr. Oric, was assassinated while traveling in the United Nations Protection Forces armored car under the alleged protection of a French officer, is shot in daylight, and no one does anything about it, and the officer gets promoted in France, the message is you can clearly get away with murder. While Sarajevo had been, a few years before, the host of the Olympic Winter Games, and it was told the world that it was an extraordinary event. There were no savages there. It was the most ecumenical city, probably one of the most ecumenical cities in the world. And the whole world was happy to be there. When he became with Brigadier Hayes, he was not on the siege. Some of you must know that the only communication that Sarajevo had at the end was under a tunnel built under the airport strip. And the UNPROFOR forces tried many times to sink this tunnel because they were afraid that the tunnel would endanger the United Nations forces at the airport. I remember Vice President Ganic of Bosnia telling me that every time he was asked by Hayes and Rose, General Hayes and Rose, what were the noises under the ground, he would say, well, we're building 50 tunnels at the same time in all kinds of directions in order to divert. That was the only way, the only link of communication. If that's not been on the siege, I can really not understand the situation.
Thank you. And was in fact, are you aware whether Brigadier Hayes was criticised even by Madeleine Albright for those remarks?
Well, Brigadier Hayes behaved more like a subordinate to the Serb side in Bosnia than as a real officer. We were surprised, the mission, to see how respectful he was with the Serb side and how disrespectful he was with the country that was hosting him. He said in the New York Times at the moment that the United Nations Security Council resolutions were woolly-headed. Actually, he said that to me the first day when we got there in Sarajevo. He said, every time I hear you speaking on BBC on the issue of Sarajevo, I feel like calling you and telling you that these resolutions are woolly-headed. And I said, well, General, I think if you had done that, that would not have been possible, because you would have been first to report to your boss, and your boss to the other one, and then to the Secretary General, and then to me. But I don't know whether it's pertinent or not, but with the same context, I read in one of your witnesses in this trial that even Morillon, General Morillon, referred to the people in Srebrenica are those nest of terrorists. And that coming from the mouth of a distinguished French officer is really very serious.
Yeah, that's an exhibit we're going to come to shortly. I'd ask for an exhibit number for this, please.
Yes, this will become Defense Exhibit D953.
Yes, thank you. And the next exhibit which we have is a draft of the International Human Rights Law Institute's chronology of the Battle and Siege of Sarajevo, 0350 3839 to 0350 4242. And it's Volume 1, Part B, January 1993 to September 1993. This is a selection of pages. We're not exhibiting the whole volume, which would be voluminous. But if you turn to page 3 of this bundle, and it's 0350 4193.
I'm sorry?
The third page, and the second paragraph. And we see it written there, British Brigadier General Hayes, Chief of Staff of UN forces in Bosnia, told reporters in the Bosnian capital that the Bosnian army bore the main blame for blocking relief supplies to Sarajevo. he said the current Serb assault on Medingman was strangling only the Bosnian military supply line into Sarajevo. So here it appears, the third page, second paragraph, it says 03504193, the top page. On the front, draft of the International Human Rights Law.
I don't see which paragraph.
I can pass up my copy. British Brigadier General Hayes, Chief of Staff of UN Forces. Here, let me provide my copy.
Yes, Mr. Sellers.
Your Honor, just to go on the record, and that's with the document we have before us, I can appreciate the defense counsel's offer. I would have to ask that we would see whatever he would pass up to a witness while a witness was testifying about an exhibit, although I believe it will probably just show that paragraph marked. And the other, I was wondering whether Your Honor would like to have any of these documents placed on the Elmo so that the public can see what we're looking at.
Okay, certainly this one.
So do you have the paragraph now, Ambassador?
Madam Usher.
Yes, have you seen the paragraph which I was referring to?
Yes. The one referring to Brigadier Hayes?
Yes.
Yes. Well, yes, I remember this well. It was referring that the Bosnians inside its own country were making life very difficult for them to take, for the Serbs to take the city of Sarajevo. And that was really the most cynical accusation, to call the victims the aggressors.
If we turn to the second to last page of this document,
Second one?
second to last page, and it says 03504227. Says, according to U.S. Ambassador Madeleine Albright, UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali accepted a U.S. complaint that 2 UN peacekeeping officers, Brigadier General Hayes, Chief of Staff of the Commander of UNPROFOR, and Lieutenant Colonel Barry Fruer, the Sarajevo spokesman of UNPROFOR, made inappropriate remarks. Hayes and Fruer had told reporters that Sarajevo was no longer under siege, but was encircled by the Serbs. Albright, yes, and that's in the quote there. So do you agree that that's a very perverse picture which was drawn by Brigadier Hayes, and that he was reprimanded by Madeleine Albright for those remarks?
Yes, that was the case. That Brigadier Hayes also criticized President Clinton. He said, what does he think he is for referring to this situation? And this is not only perverse, but a cruel way to describe a city that was being under siege and attack. Well, in that context, even Boutros Ghali said that he knew about 10 more of the cities in the world that were having a worse situation than Sarajevo.
So this was typical of a certain attitude on the part of the United Nations towards the conflict, to downplay the seriousness.
Well, it was so much so the case that, Your Honors, I ask you to imagine a United Nations Security Council mission that started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the meeting ended at 3 o'clock in the morning, seriously discussing how to protect the city of Srebrenica, while at the same time, and actually they ended before, like I said, the United Nations forces on the ground had capitulated Srebrenica. I remember that later on, the Vice President of Bosnia, Janic, told me that in the wee hours of the morning at the airport of Sarajevo, Brigadier Hayes said to General Halilovic, General, is it time for you to kneel down, let's pray, and brought down his Bible to the Bosnian commander.
The Bosnian commander being a Muslim?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'd ask for an exhibit number for this document.
This document, Mr. Jones, will become Defense Exhibit D954, and I recognize Ms. Sellers.
Your Honor, I would like to point out in this document, and counsel might be able to assist us, it appears to be a document where the numbering, the pagination, at least within the ERNs, is irregular. I just want to make it clear that the defense is submitting these distinct pages with the ERN number and not the document in its entirety.
Yes, I thought I'd said that before. There's a selection of pages, and of course the prosecution has access to the full document.
And this, I take it, is a document that was given to you or made available to you by the prosecution itself?
That I can't answer offhand, but I imagine it might be the case.
All right, but for the record, let me enter now the ERN numbers that I see on this document. First one, which is title page, is 03503-839. The second page is 03504-192. The third, 03504-193. Next page is 03504-215. Next is 03504-216, and then we have 03504-220. Next is 221. The next is 225. Next is 227, and the last one is 242. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Honour. Now, going back to a matter covered in your statement, and just well, we won't refer to it, but it concerns the fact that the head of the UNHCR, Madame Ogata of Japan, tried to bring the attention of the UN to the plight of Srebrenica back in December 1992. Do you recall that?
Yes. Actually, during my deposition in the Mr. Milosevic case, I was presented with a copy of that letter 11 years later, which we never saw in the Security Council.
And just to be clear, there's a letter of December 1992 and I think one of March 1993. Did you see either of them at the time?
No. And the serious implication of that is that Madame Ogata, whom I have personally consulted on the issue of how to draft proper guidelines for a safe area, expressly said in the letter to Mr. Boutros Ghali, I urge you, if my memory fails me, I urge you to warn the leaders of the West of the emergent and monumental tragedy that might occur in Srebrenica. That by itself should have been a very powerful alarm in the Security Council. This letter came to my attention 11 years later. Why the Secretary General would not report to the Security Council such a grave warning is something which is very reprehensible. And I have stated, Your Honors, before, that became part, what I believe still is, a major cover-up of the responsibility evaded by the international community, mainly by the main powers represented in the Council, to face the reality of genocide taking place before their own eyes. And to have an official like Madame Ogata, a very distinguished leader in her own country and the international community, reporting that seriousness was something that could not be swept under the rug like it was at the time.
So instead of being swept under the rug, the letter wasn't distributed, is that what you're saying?
It was not.
Now, during the course of being involved in the discussions on Bosnia, did you ever see maps which had been prepared in terms of allocating territory to the different to the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to the Serbs?
Oh yes, I said it in one of my. It is in the record because I said it in one of my official speeches in the Security Council. That few days after the Security Council welcomed the new member of the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina into its midst, we already started a partition process of the same member a few weeks afterwards. Not even weeks, days.
Yes. May I ask you specifically about Srebrenica? Did you see where Srebrenica was placed on those maps?
Yes, this is the point precisely that I wanted to refer to. In the first Vance and Owen plan, I remember talking to Owen and said, this cartography, exercising cartography you are doing, starts with the partition of a member country. And Srebrenica, which was on the eastern part, is on the eastern part, they considered that it was very close to Serbia proper, in a way closer to what they called at the time the Greater Serbia, that it was very distant from the rest of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So in the first maps, Srebrenica was always a target of the negotiations as a closer area of the enclave closer to Greater Serbia. It was always the case throughout.
And does that...
And today, as we know, Srebrenica is part of that part of Serbia.
And when you refer to these maps from the Vance-Owen negotiations, what year are we talking about?
They started in 1992 until the middle of 1993, when Mr. Stoltenberg replaced Mr. Vance, and all the negotiations failed at that time.
Right, so 1992 and 1993, there was already a move to put Srebrenica in, as you called it, Greater Serbia.
Oh yes, very much so. It was always a target. Not only a military target, it was a diplomatic target.
The next exhibit, which is it's from the UNHCR, dated 18 March 1993. I don't see, on the one hand, this is a document from the UNHCR, and I'm always now sensitive about any concerns for its circulation. At the same time, this was shown publicly in the Milosevic trial, and you'll see from the nature of the document it suggests to the Secretary General. I think it can be safely discussed in open session and placed on the Almo.
Do you have a position on this, Mr. Ellis?
Your Honor, I'm rather confused by relating the document to the other trial. Are we trying to say that we would want this to be sealed in this trial for whatever reason the defense counsel might offer? Are we saying that this document is just a normal potential defense exhibit document? I don't understand precisely the nature of defense counsel's comment.
Sorry, all I was saying is I think this can be public.
This is the whole issue. To my knowledge, all documents supplied to you by this UN agency is always under the caveat that at any time they may require you not to use them. Now, this document seems to have been given a number. It seems that it has been made use of in another trial. So what I would like to know from you before we proceed any further is whether you have any objection for this document to be made use of in this trial, and that it in addition be publicly made use of. In other words, if there is a reservation from UNHCR with regard to the use of this document in this trial, we will have to respect it. This is the position.
Yes, normally there's an R in front if it's restricted, so
yes, but
there's no R.
I don't know. I mean, I've had to deal with UNHCR in other cases and also in this case, but I don't know what the position is as regards you are concerned.
Your Honor, precisely. Usually that's indicated by an R before the ERN. What I would like to say is that could we just reserve this position and for an abundance of caution at this time period to not place it on the Elmo, have it public, and I will certainly come back to Your Honors by the break just to confirm that we can use it publicly or not.
Right.
All right.
In fact, there's another question I might ask which can maybe throw some light on this as well. Ambassador, do you see at the top it says the Glen Rock Group?
Yes, I do.
Are you familiar with that group?
Yes, very much. I am in the board of that group.
So, in fact, did you receive this document?
Yes, because when I was preparing for the Mr. Milosevic proceedings, I got this letter from the United Nations, and I sent it to either to the prosecutor's office or to one of the investigators. That's when I noticed that they had the fax name of the Glen Road group, yes.
Yes, that might help. We won't place on Elmo. I will read from it. There's nothing confidential, certainly, in the content. It says, quote, "The situation in the Srebrenica enclave is deteriorating by the hour. The latest reports I've received from my staff on the spot are appalling. Thousands of people are entering the town from surrounding areas which are being systematically attacked and taken by Serb forces. People are dying from military action, starvation, and lack of medical treatment at a rate of 30 to 40 a day." And then the next page, quote, "Everything would indicate that a massive humanitarian tragedy is unfolding in the Srebrenica enclave. I believe key world leaders should be alerted to these developments." And she requests that the urgent issue be brought to the attention of the Security Council. Now, you've told us, well, tell us again, because I'm not sure if it's this letter. This is dated 18 March 1993. Was this letter brought to your attention in the Security Council at the time?
No, it was not. And that's precisely the point that I did try to make, that for 4 months, the United Nations Secretariat, and I am sure the main members, knew what was developing there. But they waited until, I think it's a British journalist from ABC, Tony Bertley, went into Srebrenica and presented to the world what was happening there. I still remember the faces of some of my colleagues entering the Security Council. There was a television set outside the Security Council, watching what's happening in Srebrenica. And I could not believe that in the body that's supposed to represent international peace and security for humanity was being informed by a commercial station. That time I think it was CNN or ABC. And for 4 months, where this was taking place, evolving or deteriorating, no one had been done anything. I found that actually criminal behavior.
Right, thank you. Now, also, you've told us how you went on a mission to Srebrenica subsequently. Did the conditions there tally or not with the picture painted in this letter?
You know, the situation was even worse. I remember there were 5 other ambassadors with me. One was a Russian. And I told him, you know, I was in Leningrad recently, and I saw the museum and saw the photographs. And I said, I'm sure that watching around you here, you must be moved by the tragedy that you are watching. I said, you know, what we have here is a slow-motion genocide taking place under the protection of the United Nations security forces, protection forces. I even said that our offices look more like the capos in a concentration camp rather than the protectors of the people. This was a city which I understand had been a skiing village. You only see devastation, burned houses, only women and old men and children in the streets, no water, no electricity, no gas, no doctors. And we have been told that they were under siege and surrounded by Serb tanks all around. It looked like a shooting gallery where the people in the village were down and the Serb tanks surrounded them, that they could shoot them at their mercy, at their will. The smells, the sadness, it was in my whole experience, I never seen anything like it. I didn't see one single soldier. I said, you know, they are surrounded, a civilian population. And what was very shocking, Your Honor, I must tell you, I landed in one of the United Nations helicopters in what used to be the soccer field. And I saw about 20 men dressed in white, you know, white robes, like doctors or paramedics. And I asked one of the officers, are those Médecins Sans Frontières or the Red Cross? He said, no, they are surf doctors. And I said, what are they doing here? They are doing the triage to see if they let them out or not, of the wounded people, mostly all men. So the United Nations was helping actually in the triage to see this one comes in, this one doesn't come out. This one goes in the helicopter, this one stays here, it's been taken. Which is exactly what happened 2 years later when they took 7,000 people out of Srebrenica and murdered them in the same procedure. You get into the bus, you don't get into the bus. You strike out, you are dead. I mean, it's the coldest, most cruel experience I've seen, and under the United Nations banner. That week, Your Honors, a week before we got there, shells were exploded in the school in Srebrenica. Brigadier Hayes wanted to take us around the town. Fortunately, Madame Ogata's representative, a distinguished Spaniard, Mendiluce, who later became a member of parliament, called me aside and said to me, ask them to take you to the school. Ask them to take you to X Mountain. You will see the tanks. Thanks to him, we were able to see the deployment of the tanks. I forced the mission to go to the school. There were still remnants of children who had been killed the week before. And when I turned around behind me to see what was behind me in the school, this served colonel, together with Brigadier Hayes, probably the man who was responsible for shelling these children, was almost hand in hand with the head of the United Nations forces in Srebrenica. And later on, when we went through the town, the two of them were in the United Nations Protection Forces armed car, which I found so reprehensible that we would go into the cities being victimized by the SERF, and they take the United Nations Security Council mission and parade them through the town with the officer in charge of the destruction, siege, and attacks and vandalism of that village.
Thank you. Thank
yes,
you very
I
much
think
indeed.
we can have a break now, Mr. Jones.
Yes, perhaps an exhibit number for this before
yes, this will become Defense Exhibit D955, with the understanding, Ms. Sellers, that you come back to us with problems relating to the publicity of this document. Then we will put it under seal, of course.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
We will have a 30-minute break. And then we will have just one more session to make it possible for us to stop in time for the plenary that we have.
So we're stopping at 4 o'clock, is that correct?
No, plenary starts at 4 o'clock. So we'll try to stop any time between 3 and 3:30.
Yes, well, I'm making good progress.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Ambassador, we'll have a 30-minute break.
Thank you, sir.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever.